Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we're diving into something that might sound a little dry, costs, but I promise you it's one of the most powerful strategic tools in business. We're going to see how understanding just two types of costs can literally be the difference between explosive growth and a complete flameout.
So, let me ask you this. What's the single most important number you need to know in your business? You might think it's your total sales, right? Or maybe your net profit. Well, the real answer is actually a bit deeper. It's the number that controls both of those things, and it all comes down to how your business spends its money.
And to figure out that crucial number, we have to start with the foundation. Let's break down the two basic ways a business spends money. It's a really simple concept, but trust me, the implications are absolutely massive.
Okay, so on one side, you have your fixed costs. Just think of your monthly rent or the salaries you pay your permanent team. It doesn't matter if you sell one widget or a million widgets, that cost stays the same. Then, on the other side, you have your variable costs. These are tied directly to how much you sell. The more you produce, the more you spend on things like raw materials or sales commissions. Simple as that.
And this piece of advice right here is so important. You know, it's really easy to get completely paralyzed trying to figure out where every single penny goes. Is the electricity bill fixed or variable? For strategic thinking, it doesn't matter. The point is not to get bogged down. Just make a call. Is it mostly fixed or mostly variable? That's all you need to start making smarter moves.
Right, so once you've split your cost into those two buckets, you can find the first major hurdle for every single business, the break-even point. This is that magic moment where your business stops bleeding money and finally gets its head above water. It's the tipping point.
The engine that actually gets you to that tipping point is something called the contribution margin. It sounds fancy, but it's a super powerful idea. For everything you sell, you take the price and you subtract the variable costs that went into making it. That leftover cash is what contributes to paying off all your big fixed costs. And once those are paid off, every single dollar of contribution margin from then on is pure, sweet profit.
And here's the really cool part. You can use that contribution margin to figure out exactly how much you need to sell to survive. You just take your total fixed cost and divide it by the contribution margin you make per item. Boom! That's the exact number of units you need to sell to cover all your bills. No more guesswork. It's just simple math.
This right here, this is that tipping point visualized. Think of it like a sports game. Everything below that intersection point, you're in the loss zone. But once your sales line crosses your cost line, you're in the profit zone. Every single sale you make after this point just runs up the score. This is the moment your business really starts winning.
But getting past break-even, that's just the beginning. This is where the real strategy kicks in, because the mix of your fixed and variable costs creates something called operating leverage, and it is a very powerful but also very dangerous two-edged sword.
So operating leverage is basically a magnifier. It measures how much a small change in your sales can blow up your profits. If you have a business with really high fixed costs, like a huge factory or a big salaried R&D team, you have high operating leverage. That means a tiny little increase in sales can cause a massive jump in profits. But, and this is a huge but, a small drop in sales can cause absolutely devastating losses.
Just look at this example. You've got two companies, and they both get a 10% bump in sales. But Company A, the one with high fixed costs and high leverage, sees its profit jump by double what Company B makes. So why the huge difference? Well, once Company A covers its big fixed costs, almost every new dollar of sales drops straight to the bottom line. It's a profit amplifier.
Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's check out two really fascinating stories where this exact choice of cost structure basically sealed their fate.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like the beginning of a bad joke, right? But the answer is that the future of both of these companies was decided by how well they understood, or in one case misunderstood, their fixed and variable costs. Okay, first up, the success story. We have Gavin Smith and his team, who took over a beach bar that was losing $100 grand a year. After a ton of hard work, they managed to get sales up to $1.5 million. And they hit their break-even point. They weren't making a dime, but they had stopped the bleeding. Now this is where their understanding of costs became their secret weapon. They sat down and asked, okay, what happens if we can just bring in another $500,000 in sales? And when they ran the numbers, they realized their fixed costs, the rent, the core staff, the overhead, were already paid for. So out of that next $500,000 in sales, a mind-blowing $300,000 would be pure profit. So what they did next was incredibly bold. Even though they were making zero profit, they confidently invested $100 grand in marketing. Think about that.
They were spending future profits they hadn't even made yet. They could only do this because they knew their numbers inside and out, and they knew that growth wasn't just possible, it would be wildly profitable.
And the result? The marketing blitz worked. It brought in the extra sales, and after you subtract the cost of that marketing campaign, the business walked away with a $200,000 profit. By understanding their leverage, they took a flat business and made it incredibly profitable, and they did it fast. Their cost structure was a springboard.
Okay, now let's flip the coin and look at the cautionary tale. This is a startup called Decision Impact. They had a game-changing product, and they had just landed millions of dollars in venture capital funding. The future looked bright.
But instead of staying lean and mean, they went on an absolute blitzscaling spending spree. They hired a super expensive C-suite, quadrupled their office space, brought on a dozen new tech specialists, and hired the top law and accounting firms. In other words, they piled on massive fixed costs, making a huge bet that explosive growth was right around the corner.
And then, crisis struck. The pandemic hit, which stalled their product development and completely cut off access to their customers. All of a sudden, those enormous fixed costs, all those high salaries, that giant office lease, they weren't a bet on the future anymore. They were a giant concrete anchor dragging the company to the bottom of the ocean month after agonizing month.
The ending was as brutal as it was predictable. Bankruptcy. That high operating leverage that they thought would rocket them to the moon became a fatal flaw when sales didn't show up. The same force that can amplify profits, amplify their losses until there was nothing left.
So what's the big lesson from these two stories? It's that your cost structure isn't just some boring detail for the accountants. No, it is a fundamental strategic choice that defines how much risk your business can handle and what its path to growth looks like.
For any young company, the name of the game is agility. The playbook is pretty simple. Keep your fixed costs as low as humanly possible. Outsource what you can instead of hiring full-time staff. Try to pay your partners based on the revenue you generate. Use equity to reward key people instead of huge salaries. All of this keeps your break-even point low and gives you the flexibility to survive when things inevitably go wrong. And that brings us to the final question, the one for you to really think about. When you look at your own business, or maybe an idea you've been kicking around, have you designed its cost structure to be a springboard, ready to launch you into profitability like that beach bar? Or is it a heavy anchor, weighing you down and making you too slow to adapt? The answer to that question could truly make all the difference.